My sincere apologies for the amount of Duran Duran jokes that you're going to hear, puns that you're going to hear. I am sorry. It's worse than me going on about Danny Ings. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am just about still Baz Barrett. I am reunited for the first time in what seems like forever with my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. But because the floodgates have been opened in terms of being sociable and actually having more than one person on the show, we thought, let's expand the fun. Let's get some more people on here. So we're both delighted to say that we are joined by Dave Scott of the Irish Lions, Emi Martinez's number one fan. Rumours that he wished he was the Golden Glove during the World Cup ceremony have not been confirmed or denied. But good to see you again, Dave. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me back, lads. It's been a while. I'll have to look at an earlier recording. As you're probably aware, some listeners, I became a father the exact same time as you were recording your end of season review last season, obviously. And Paddy stepped in for me because I was otherwise occupied. So I'm interested to see have I just aged terribly when I look back at the previous episode. But yeah, great to be back. Sadly, not getting over and back. Usually when I go to Villa Park, it's out and back in the day. So I'm watching on TV now for our most. But I've gone and got a subscription to one of the big Rupert Murdoch enterprises, unfortunately, to make up. But has to be done. So but I've been doing as much research as I can. So hopefully some of my insights will be not too nonsensical this time.
I'm sure you'll put me and Will to shame in terms of your Villa analysis. But if you, like Dave, want to go and check out the difference between pre-fatherhood Dave and post-fatherhood Dave, then you can go to our YouTube channel, as Dave mentioned, at Talk of the Trinity. You can find all our previous videos there. And speaking of things which are not left for a while, that is our Twitter page, at Talk Trinity, which is always up to date with all the latest Villa news, transfers, rumours, polls, Will saying why Danny Ings is brilliant. So you're always going to get your latest Villa news there. Or if you're travelling or waiting for a train to turn up, which is an increasingly long experience for those listeners in the UK will be aware, you can go onto our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, to have our audio version of the show straight into your ears. And we are also on Fan Hub as well. But speaking of things which are music to your ears, not just his podcast, but the sound of the full-time whistle at Villa Park on Friday evening, where Aston Villa welcomed Leeds to town and went home with the 3 points after a 2-1 victory. I think all of us on this recording predicted a Villa win. But for you, Dave, did the game reflect the script that you had going into the game? Or was it simply a case of your hero making sure Villa got the 3 points?
Well, in our little predictor score league that we have, I think I for once got a result right, and I said 2-1. But I kind of thought Villa would be on top after the carnage the previous weekend, which I suppose we should just move on and not ever mention again. I felt we'd come roaring out of the traps, and we did, and we got that goal. The rest of the first half, I couldn't quite believe it. I couldn't quite believe it was 1-0 to Villa at half time. How on earth Leeds didn't score in that first half? I don't know. New fullback Moreno off the line. Was there a chance for a penalty? Douglas Luiz needs to be a bit careful. We nearly conceded one. Emi Martinez was just, oh, wow, what a save. I mean, and this is the thing. I don't think Robert Olsen is making that save. Now, I realise he's getting derided a lot on social media and everywhere. probably by fans on the ground as well. So I'm not going to jump on board with that. But how important is it to have a really top goalkeeper? I think the fact that we got to halftime at 1-0 was a big psychological boost for us. Leeds still came at us in the second half. We were better in the second half, though. We got our goal. They pulled one back. I mean, that's the Villa way. Playoff final, 2-0 up. Make it an interesting end. That's just the way we're going to win games now. Can't never be easy. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say is the interview with Jesse Marsh, he kind of said it was a really complete performance, really, really happy with the performance. How many times has that been the Villa manager saying, well, look, we haven't won today, but we've, there's lots of positives out there. Now it's the glove is on the other hand. Is that the way? I'm trying to come up with an analogy there. That's the one. It's all the gloves on Emi Martinez, But yeah, we did the smash and grab, and goals wins games. So there we go. We got more goals than them. We won the game, and that's the most important thing.
Yep. I mean, as you say, Dave, we could all speak from personal experience that there is usually nothing worse for a fan of a team near the bottom of the table watching another defeat to hear the manager say, we were brilliant, we played really well. Even if we did play very well, it's like, well, we still lost and we're looking over our shoulders for relegation. The Leeds fans at the ground didn't appear to be too happy with the manager, Jesse Marsh, at full time, based on some of the chants and boos that were coming out from that end. But speaking of positivity or negativity, you mentioned there Alex Moreno came in for his debut slightly earlier than what we would have anticipated at kickoff. You mentioned he had quite a bit to do during the course of the game. For you, Will, what did you think of Moreno's performance? Were you sitting there thinking, I can see why we spent the money, or are you thinking he's going to need a bit of time to get himself integrated with the speed of English football?
Well, to be honest with you, I was quite fortunate to see all of his debut because, let me tell you, I didn't see the start of the game. I went to go and watch that movie, Megan, and you can find out my review of that at Will's Movie Reviews on Twitter. It's shit. But Alex Moreno, obviously I'm listening in the car and we get the goal and I nearly crashed. And then I hear that Luca Dean gets injured, get back. Alex Moreno, do you know what? I had contrasting emotions for him, which got more and more positive as the game went on. Because when he first came on, he looked a little bit shaky, like a Friday night in Birmingham wasn't really for him. He'd rather be down Broad Street or down back at Betis. It took him a little while. They were trying to rough him up a little bit, but he put in some great tackles, and that goal line clearance was absolutely phenomenal. And I imagine that he would have endeared himself with all of the Villa fans watching or listening or however they found out about that clearance, because it was the 100% commitment that we want, from our players. We've had too many seasons now under Gerrard where players weren't putting in the effort as much. Moreno comes in on his debut. I mean, how we managed to block it as well, because he completely missed it with his first leg, didn't he? And then knocked it round the post. But it was what we needed. It gave the crowd a lift again. And in the second half, I thought he looked a lot better getting forward. He was getting into some nice spaces, sort of tucking inside from that full-back position, but then at the same time being able to bomb it down the wing because you had Buendia coming inside as well. So for me, it was a positive. I'll give him, a 7 out of 10 type thing. Luca Dean will have, struggled to get back in, I feel. However, I don't see the signing of Moreno being the end of Luca Dean. I think it's the beginning of a stronger squad coming to the forefront for Aston Villa and pushing up the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going with maybe seen as perhaps an old-fashioned mantra now of you want 2 quality players for every position, then we've got left back ticked if Digne wants to stay and Moreno demonstrates that he is a first choice player. What I'd say about watching Moreno in the first half, especially for the first 15, 20 minutes that he was on, I just kept saying to myself, Nemanja Vidic was crap on his debut as well. And look what happened to him. But Moreno, as you say, did grow into the game as it went on. And as Emre alluded to when he bought Moreno, it was not necessarily his defensive play primarily why he was bought. It was his attacking input as well. And certainly during the course of the second half, he was finding himself further forward into some threatening positions. But just want to pick up on a point you raised there in terms of about when Moreno got back and in terms of effort, and maybe comparing it to previous managers. And I'll throw this question to you, Dave. Do you think it is a situation whereby players under previous managers were not putting in the effort for whatever reason, or it's kind of in a nod, wink, wink kind of the direction I would go into, having listened to Tyrone Mings, John McGinn, Konza, other players talking about Emre's obsessive attention to detail and personal performance. Is it more the case that the players now have been better coached to be in better positions to know kind of what they're meant to be doing? So it wasn't a lack of effort before, it was just a lack of a plan. Or do you go on the lack of effort side?
I can't think of many players who went out in the last couple of years and didn't try. It wasn't as though we had people, walking, rather than running back to make a tackle. I think under Gerrard, obviously people in the centre halves found it difficult because he told the fullbacks to get, forward, and he wanted the DMs maybe to cover that kind of wing back position, and it's tactics that worked well at Rangers, and it just wasn't really working more than anything else. So I'd be inclined to say it's tactics. Dean Smith, so long now. I know he generally he went a bit more defensive after that first half of the season, but I think is kind of when we came up and we were trying to have an attacking front foot, we were left a bit exposed then, and that kept on happening to us. So I would go on the side of it's Emery's tactics, and I certainly heard when he was appointed, people who had worked with him, people who had, like, journalists who had monitored him over in Spain, said that the Aston Villa players, they won't know what's hit them after these first few training sessions, because it's going to be so much more running, so much more less positional play, and more constantly moving forwards and backwards when the team has the ball. So it's early days yet, but from everything I can garner on Emery, they're the tactics. People are going to be just running more, and I suppose it'll be a survival of the fittest, quite literally, the people who can keep running all game. And someone else say, someone like Tyrone Mings, who's has been, I think, a big character in the defence and kind of rock solid in terms of being the man in the box. He's been asked to do a lot more now, and maybe you do see some poor passes and some mistakes from him, and I think that's just because it's this new style. He's not used to it. So I think we will see the tactics, as we're talking about tactics. I think that we'll see who can adapt and who can play these tactics, and the people who can will be the people who are kept on. The people who can't, I know, I'm sure that's another discussion, but they'll be the ones who are moved on. But to answer your question, I honestly don't think effort has been a problem. Maybe Coutinho towards the end of the Gerrard days, I could see that his effort dipped, but that might have been he was a bit more demoralised as well. But that's a whole nother discussion. By and large, I go tactics rather than lack of effort.
And those, speaking of players who may be required to be more adaptable and play in a number of different positions, brings us on nicely to the goal scorers, Leon Bailey, Emi Buendia. Bailey, we've talked about in previous episodes in terms of some games he's playing up front, other games playing on the wing. Buendia maybe playing more centrally, kind of in the hole, maybe more under Gerrard, kind of more Emre starting on the left, drifting kind of in the centre as well. As you say, Dave, a lot of tactical flexibility is going to be required from these players. Will, what did you think of those two players' performance? Was it just the goal was the highlight, or did you see signs that they have a big part to play in the Emre tactical revolution?
I feel that there were other players who were more instrumental into the win, such as Dave's favourite goalkeeper.
Yeah.
The save that you mentioned earlier was absolutely brilliant. And I know you said that you're not going to put a downer on Robin Olsen, but I have followed your new account at Robin Olsen is a number two on Twitter. Going back to those two, though, Bailey obviously fantastic for the goal, took it really well. He's got a habit of scoring early goals in front of the whole end in the first half, hasn't he? This season. Apart from that, there were times where he was still a little bit frustrating. He probably did a little bit too much trying to get down the wings instead of driving into the box. But then again, that could have been the tactical approach that Leeds set up to try and keep him wider, to stop him from getting into the box where he could create. And if so, they did very well with that. But, you know, he got the assist, if you like, for the second goal. He got that shot off. When Dia popped up, took the chance with the header, I thought he was offside. I think we all thought he was offside to start with until we saw the line get drawn. Apart from that, though, I don't really remember Emi Buendia doing too much. But you know what? I don't mind. He's popped up. He's got the winning goal, and we got 3 points. I think personally, and there's been a lot of say on Twitter about this, the man of the match for me was, and most influential player was Boubacar Kamara. What a class above he's that turn he did on the edge of our own box in the first half, where he had whoever it was pelting at him at full speed, and he just walks off. He lays the ball. He knows when to tackle. He's got that high press as well. However, there were a lot of calls as well for Leon Bailey. Obviously, Sky Sports gave him man of the match, and there was also Ashley Young and Emi Martinez, you know, who were in that conversation as well. Who do you reckon, Baz? Who was your man of the match?
You raised an interesting point in terms of how you define man of the match. I mean, in terms of, I think if you're defining man of the match as the player who made the material difference in terms of if that moment wouldn't have happened or those moments wouldn't have happened, the result would have been different. I would say Martinez for the saves, because I think that was a real kind of momentum changer, especially in the first half. As Dave mentioned, Leeds were comfortably the better team after the goal, and so if they would have gone in at half-time level, it could have been a different outcome. You don't know. I mean, Villa stepped it up in the second half, as we mentioned, so we could have, we could have won 4-1 if it was 1-1 at half-time. You just don't know. But I think, especially personally, I'm not worried about Martinez's commitments and in terms of kind of him having a bit of a party after Argentina won the World Cup. But there's been a few mumblings about, he's going to be looking for greener pastures and looking to kind of to get an exit sharpish. But no, I think performances like that demonstrate that, as long as he's the first choice Villa goalie, he's going to do the job to the best he can. I mean, we'd all love him to stay for the rest of his career, but yeah, I don't think there's an element of him. There's no lack of effort from Martinez, I think, and in terms of it, in a phrase you don't really utter too much. It's nice to have our bastard back, really, in terms, especially when he's pulling out saves like that. But in terms of the player who you look at this Villa team, apart from Martinez, who's we discussed previously, is currently, you'd put him in the world-class bracket. But a player who you look at and think, God, he's good. And he is going to be good for us a while if we can keep hold of him, as you meant, is Kamara, as you mentioned.
Yeah, if I can come in on just before you move on the goal, from Kamara, the obvious pass when he got the ball was to give it to Luca Dean, who's in space. And certainly when I played football back here in Ireland, a lot of pressure on get the ball, pass to someone, but Boubacar Kamara to have the intelligence to go, oh, hang on, if I give it to him, we're not going to score. Where's Leon Bailey? Hang on, I'll just switch the side, wait a bit. There he is, and got a lovely ball to Leon Bailey. It just showed so much maturity, and it was the right pass. But I think 90% of us would have just, out to Luca Dean, he's going to cross in the box.
I mean, I'm not personally entirely sure kind of whether Kamara was Gerrard's pick or our scouting team's pick. But if he was Gerrard's pick, I'd almost let him off kind of the pretty much near year of dross just for Kamara, really, just because he looks a player, doesn't he, really? And yeah, as you said, that kind of vision as well, which you don't really expect kind of to be top of his locker. I mean, in terms of he's in the team for defensive midfield duties, kind of got a good tackle on him, good kind of short game, but yeah, that kind of attacking creative vision as well. A good glimpse into the future if we can keep hold of him and if he can stay fit, because he can. Speaking of Argentinian players, could be a bit like McAllister at Brighton. He's more attacking, I'd say, McAllister than Camara, but yeah, kind of being able to influence play on both ends of the pitch. We can keep hold of him, then yeah, it's only going to be good news for us. But ultimately, in terms of the good news for us was going out with a win, really, because I think in terms of, you look at it half full, half empty, depending what way you look at it. Half empty, you'd say a better team would have taken their chances and beat us. Half full, we got the win and held on. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, Dave, nobody looks too much at the performance in a couple of years' time or even a couple of weeks' time. They just have a look at the history books and see the result on the piece of paper, and everybody moves on.
Yeah, I mean, and even that first goal, it reminded me of the Fergie days, you know, ball in our own box, very, very quickly, 2 passes into the net. You know, it's finding a way to score, to turn defence into attack and catch the other team out. And like, Leeds huffed and puffed and they couldn't blow the house down. But if we can find a way to score goals, to get from one box to the other quickly and get in the net, you know, we will win games. And, you know, top teams get these wins. They don't play well, but they find a way to score goals. And so if this is the future of just getting a good goal and, you know, even if we have poor possession, so be it. Fine. I'm delighted with that. Delighted with the win.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be a counter-attacking team, which I think we largely have been under Emery so far, make sure you're a good one. Make sure you can get those quick transitions, as you mentioned. And yeah, the early signs continue to be positive. Although we are full of positive vibes after the Leeds game, there was, as we mentioned, in terms of Luca Digne, injury issues, and also Ollie Watkins went off injured during the course of the first half. So questions are being asked in respect of whether Villa will be going into the transfer market. And we've mentioned Moreno. Villa have also gone into the transfer market again for Duran. I mean, you will no doubt hear a number of Duran based puns in the next 10 minutes. So see how many you can jot down. But the Chicago Fire, Colombian winger, looks like he will be joining Villa based on subject again a work permit. I will freely admit that apart from, I know more about Duran than I do about the new centre forward / winger that we're signing. Any thoughts on our signing? I mean, it's for about 14 million if reports are to be believed, so not an insignificant amount of change. Will, you excited? Indifferent? Bemused?
I'm excited by all of the Emery acquisitions. You know, he the way that he's just got us playing for a start has been a breath of fresh air. So you've got to be excited by that. He knows what he's doing, doesn't he? And it's nice to see that these players want to play for him, not because they were his mate back in their playing days, but because they know he's an elite coach. I mean, I've got to be honest with you. I didn't know much about Johan Duran either. I've seen that Aston Villa have insisted that he comes back from international duty to sign for us and could very well be on the bench against Southampton if we can get everything cleared by then. But I would imagine that there are a lot of other Villa fans like me who have helped increase the number of viewing figures on YouTube for Johan Duran, Chicago Fire, goal involvements. You know, I watched some clips the other day, and he looks like a beast. He looks like a faster Benteke from those clips, and it is from only clips. You know, he's strong, he's big, left foot as well, which is nice and versatile. Scored some great goals, likes the near post. You know, as many goals and assists as he's got this season, it might not set the world alight. But when you look at where Chicago Fire are in the league, where they're down the bottom, it's not bad, really, is it? If you can score goals in a bad team, then you're going to come to the best team the world has ever seen. You're going to score goals for us. Hopefully, he's a bit of a mix between Angel and Benteke. I mean, Dave, if he could be a mix of 2 players, and don't just say, oh, but I'll like him however he is. If he could be a mix of 2 strikers from your time at Villa, which 2 would you be merging together?
Well, I mean, I'm out on my own on this one. I think the best striker I have ever seen play for Aston Villa is Dwight York. Now, I know because of the way he left, you know, he's not very popular. But I mean, Dwight York, and even though he was more of a winger, I really, really liked Ashley Young and those runs into the box and how many penalties he won for us over the years. He got pretty good at that skill, actually. So but he does seem a bit stronger. But then there's the Benteke kind of aspect, so maybe a little bit of Dalian Atkinson as well. So that's 3 players. So we'll get rid of Ashley Young. So if you could be somewhere between Dwight York and Dalian Atkinson, and I think Dwight was the one who came in to replace Dalian and Dean. So a combination of those two. Like you, I've been looking at all his goals in MLS. What I would say is that I've learned that the marking in the MLS isn't very good. So he got an awful lot of room on some of those goals, and so people are going to mark him a lot tighter. So let's not expect him to suddenly burst onto the scene yet. One for the future. I have an idea. This guy wants to make it big, and he's very ambitious. I don't know if you've heard of the infamous Instagram Q&A. He was only at the club for Chicago Fire for a few months, and he was in a Q&A on Instagram, and someone asked, if you got a chance to leave for a bigger club, would you? And of course, now the response should have been, as all the media trained footballers go, oh, well, I'm totally focused on Chicago Fire. Unfortunately, this 18-year-old kid just answered, oh yes, I would leave. So, which didn't go down too well. So we had to actually issue an apology, and Chicago Fire had to issue an apology. Now, subsequently, a lot of the fans, they didn't reject him. They said, he's young. But it just, he always wanted to kind of to be looking to go to a bigger league. And I suspect it's happened a bit sooner than the fans over there thought it would. That being said, they signed him for $2 million and sold him for, in dollars now, it's $16 million, I think. So big profit for them. So great business for them, considering how young he is. So one for the future. Not one I'd expect to trouble Danny Ings' place just now. You'll be a bit relieved to hear. But maybe get a good pre-season under him, and then we might get glimpses of him this season. But I'd expect it'll be next year before we start to see how he's going to do in the Premier League under Emery.
So, well, his answers to that Q&A were just the reflex. There you go. There's one for you. One for you. Moving very swiftly on. In terms of rumours, some other players who may be joining, you have been keeping us up to date, Will, on the Twitter page. Are there any players for you that are looking like they're likely to come in, or are you having to save a prayer for some of your more fanciful targets? Two.
Before you come in, Duran were in Dublin this year. I actually sent a message to your group, if you remember. It was one of those weird ones. My baby just been born, but I had to go because it had been cancelled for 2 years. They didn't play Save a Prayer. Gutted.
Rude.
Anyway, carry on. Rude.
It is rude. A man who's never rude, Mr. Forrest. So, what's going on in the transfer rumour mill at the moment?
I try not to be. Well, there's a lot of links, aren't there, to the Villarreal players in the hope that they will come and join the Real Villa. Pau Torres, his name is knocking about again with discussion or talks that Villa may go in a little bit later for him in the transfer window. Do we need Pau Torres at the moment? Well, I wouldn't mind him at the moment. He's a top quality defender. I don't think you just go, oh, it's all right, we'll wait till the summer. We've got Callum Chambers. He would be a comet from the sky. Pau Torres would, not a cream egg, let me tell you that. You've got Chuck Wasey, Jackson as well at Villarreal. Danny Parejo has also been linked to us for 12 million. I think he's probably a bit too much on the older side to come into the centre midfield. However, you look at somebody like Jan Martinez at Wolves, and he just Benjamin Button of midfield football, isn't he, really? The other players who we've been linked with will have seen over the last couple of weeks. Matteo Guendouzi has been linked with a move to the Villa. There's talks that Villa haven't made an offer. And then you just go down all sorts of different avenues of, well, he'd reject you anyway, or no, he really wants to come and work with Emery again. There's Weston McKennie, who allegedly has turned us down a couple of days ago. He was fantastic in the World Cup for the USA whilst they participated in the competition. And then the other one is a player who I haven't seen too much of, but he gets massive rave reviews. And that was Morocco's own Anuhai, the young central midfielder who played alongside Amrabat. He's playing currently at bottom of the league, Rangers, or Angers, however you pronounce it, over in France. talk that the chairman has flown into England, that Leeds were going to get him for 39 million, but we decided to say, well, why don't you just come and have a little chat with us? Come on, you can come and sit in centre midfield with Mr. Kamara or Mr. Louise, you know. But however, if we do bring him in, I think it just goes to show that it means another Frenchman will be on their way. Talk of Morgan Sanson joining Freddie Gilbert, going through the exit door, but we'll see. We'll see. Are there any signings that excite you with the rumours? It made sense to me.
Well, I've just got to hope that any players that come in are there for the right reasons, and that they're not here, you know, just for the money, and that they, you know, have the appetite to play, and that they're hungry like the wolf. Free. There you go. That's me done. Enough of my shenanigans. Dave, how are you finding in terms of these transfer rumours? Any that are catching your eye? Any that you hope we get over the line?
Yeah, I think we need another attacking midfielder, like winger, because we have Leon Bailey, who's a huge threat, but I don't think he's actually, even though he's left-footed, I think he's been playing a lot on the right. So, but we need someone down the other flank as well. So there's two. So that game I said I wouldn't talk about, everything went through Leon Bailey. So the defense just said, let's just try and, you know, surround him, and they were able to focus on that one side because we didn't have some on the other side. So if we can get another really good attacking, a winger or an attacking midfielder, I think that would be the missing kind of, missing part of the jigsaw, to have us a really, really good threat, so we can get lots of those kind of counter-attacking goals. A few names that have been coming up. I'm going to say this quickly because I know my pronunciation will be wrong, and hopefully no one will notice. Gerard Deulofeu, former Watford player. I think he's at Udinese now. He's the rumours that there are talks there. I wonder what's going to happen with Sahil Sarr. There were rumours that could be back on, but again, we just have to wait and see. Is it Arnaud Danjuma? And the other one that's been linked is Nicholas Jackson, and it's because they both played with Emery, so they were easy links. That might be just lazy journalism. But we need an attacking player, and I think one of them would do well. We don't need them all, but I definitely think we need something else in our attacking midfield, and players who can run and get forward and probably play on the other flank, so we can have both Bailey on one side and another on the other, and they can then feed Watkins or Ings. Because even though the goal returns aren't fantastic for Watkins or Ings, I kind of think that we haven't really been giving them the best service, so it's easy to have a go at the lads up front, but we have to create chances for them. And certainly I'd mention, Coutinho, anytime he's on, he's just started shooting from like 20 yards, so we need something, we need someone who can play that killer pass through or run through and get into a good position and score like Bailey. But just that last, as I say, piece of the jigsaw, and one of those players I'd be happy with.
It's easy and also fun to have a go at Danny Ings whenever Mr. Trinity is in earshot. That always gets a reaction. But as you mentioned, in terms of the need for a winger or two, it is looking increasingly bad business that we sold all our wingers in the summer for magic beans, basically, from what it appears. I know Jayden scored for Cardiff last week in the FA Cup against Leeds, so maybe we can. No, I can't talk myself into that, unfortunately. But things I can talk myself into is the preview of our next opponents on Saturday afternoon down at St Mary's, where we go and play Southampton. Safe to say it's not been a happy hunting ground for Villa recently. St Mary's, at the end of Dean Smith last season, Friday night defeat. I was there a few years ago, one of our last away games before COVID, where we were terrible and got beat. Luckily, unluckily, depending what way you want to look at it, Southampton not had the best of seasons, I think is safe to say, as at time of recording before the midweek Premier League games, they are bottom of the Premier League on goal difference. It's a shame that nobody we know predicted that Southampton would do very poorly this season. I mean, if you know anybody who did, then maybe we'll get him as a guest on the show. But bearing in mind they are bottom, and that usually demonstrates that there's been problems during the course of the season. They've got rid of Hussein Hall finally, in terms of a couple of 9-0, 9-1 defeats. He went through, but then eventually his time ran out. Nathan Jones, current manager, I think there was a bit of head scratching in respect of that appointment. The fans did not take very well to him early on. There were some very irate Southampton fans complaining about his style of play or perceived lack thereof. But a week can make a difference in football, and Southampton are on the back of a 2-match winning streak. Firstly, in the League Cup, where they beat Man City at home, which I think was even though Man City didn't play their first choice team, it was still a shock for Southampton to go through that particular tie. And Southampton were the crisis club 2 weeks ago, and because there always has to be a new crisis club, they went to Everton on Saturday just gone and beat them, and now Everton are the new crisis club. So Southampton have managed to get that crisis club tag off their back just in time to play us. So Southampton, Dave, what are your thoughts on them? Looking forward to this one, or do you think it's going to be a tricky tie?
Yeah, we gotta be very, very careful because they've just suddenly got their tails up. Obviously, okay, Man City are putting out a reserve side in Carabao Cup, but still, I mean, the Southampton played really well, and then beating Everton, says that okay, Everton are in trouble, and you'd like to think we're a bit beyond Everton, but they've all of a sudden got a world of confidence. So don't look at the table and think that Southampton are they're down there in relegation, we should win this. It doesn't work like that, as we know. And Nathan Jones, he did well at Luton. He did very, very well at Luton. Didn't do too well at Stoke, but he did very well at Luton, and he's an ex-Southampton man. So, it could work. It could really work. Could prove to be a good appointment. So, beware of the wounded lion. We're the lions, though. So what are Southamptons? The wounded saint. they'll get a couple of miracles at the end of it. So I don't, seeing as though we actually haven't been playing that well. We didn't play too well against Wolves. We didn't do well in the FA Cup. I said I wouldn't mention that. And we didn't play fantastically well against Leeds, got the win. So I kind of, and we're away from home against a side who are tails up, desperate for points. I'd be happy with a draw. I know that sounds a little bit pessimistic, but just the way things go, I could see this being a draw.
No, for you, Will, in your analysis of the game, once you stopped going around saying "I told you so" in respect of how Southampton will be doing this season, are you with your mantra of positive will? Is that going to be in full force on Saturday, or do you think we're going to need a couple of Hail Marys to get ourselves the win? There you go, on a roll today.
Well, I think that when you look at it as Dave's just put it, that we didn't do very well against Wolves and we got a draw. We lost stupidly to Stevenage. We weren't very good against Leeds and we managed to beat them. Southampton are on a good run of form. They've won 2 games now. They've beaten Man City and then they've gone to Everton and beaten them. Then I think it goes without saying that we're going to beat them 2-0 away and leave the South Coast with all 3 points. Danny Ings is going to score against his old club. You can put that bet on if you want to. And yeah, do you know what? I don't think it's going to be a nice performance at all. I think it is going to be a digging deep and let's stop them as they try to attack us, especially with Walker Peters coming back into the side and, into a bit of form. They've got Orsic, who, not a bad signing. Didn't realise how old he was, though, but a good signing nonetheless.
Neither did I, probably.
But you never know. They might have James Bree against us as well before the weekend if the rumours are true. I think we're going to have too much for them, mate. I really do. I think that we'll just sit in where we need to, go and counter-attack them, get our goals, do our job, and then, we'll be straight back on the motorway, up here, and the lads will be fine.
So Will, you think that Danny Ings will have a view to kill and Southampton will come undone?
Yes, 4, 5. Yes, we are knocking them off.
Isn't Come Undone a Robbie Williams song?
Oh, is it? Oh, no.
It is as well. It is also a Duran Duran song.
Duran.
So both both your musical tastes coming to the fore there in terms of how you pull that. But I think the point you make there, Will, in respect to sitting back and counter-attacking them, will determine the game in the sense of whether we will be allowed to do that. I think in terms of, as we've mentioned previously, the better results under Emre have been when we've been able to counter-attack, playing against teams who are expected to have, and themselves expect to have, more of the ball, more of the onus to attack. It'd be interesting to see how Southampton's set up. Home team, you would expect ordinarily for them to be on the front foot. You may expect the players to try and put on more of a show, maybe to keep the crowd on side, because as I mentioned earlier, they have not been exactly best pleased previously in respect of some of the attacking performances, or whether Southampton sit back and look to counter-attack us. And then in terms of, especially I think the Wolves game at home in particular, we struggled when the onus was on us to go and break a team down. Luckily against Leeds, we just let them have the ball for most of the game, especially in the first half, so we could counter and scored early. So we were able to get an early goal, counter. And as a side, the stats for Villa in terms of the amount of early goals, both ends. You know, I mean, Will, you keep missing the start of games. You know, you probably missed most of the goals this season in terms of for the Villa stats. But you mentioned in terms of one thing you hopefully won't be missing is a Danny Ings goal for a Villa victory. Where are you going score wise? Do you think this is going to be at the odd goal, or are you going to go for one of your famous thrashings?
9-0.
Yep.
No, we get. It'll be 2-0. It'll be at least 2-0. I think Southampton will. I think they'll be on the front foot because of being the home team, so they'll come at us. If they're not, if they're trying to counter attack and we're trying to counter attack, it's going to be like that game when you're kids and everyone says, "Right, start off on your own goal line. I'll put the ball in the middle, and when I blow the whistle, the first one there, you know, and they all run, and they'll just be stood there watching each other, having a little look." Nah, 2-0, 2-0 at least. Asterixy.
There you go, 2-0 for you, Will. Dave, you mentioned you thought it was going to be a draw. Do you reckon there's going to be goals in this one?
I actually wonder, could this be an all? You know, and they don't happen very much, but boo. No, I just, I'll never be asked back again. I just think this is going to be a bit more difficult for us. I think, Martinez will be called in action to make a couple of good saves. Is Ollie Watkins still out? I'm not so sure. I haven't seen a team sheet or an update yet from memory. I just wonder. I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think we'll cancel each other out and we'll be happy to get out with a point. I'm sorry, that's so pessimistic, but it just feels like that game that's going to be not as straightforward as everyone thinks.
Well, a clean sheet's optimistic in terms of we don't tend to keep. Well, we kept one at Tottenham thinking about it, but generally speaking, we have got a goal in us at both ends.
So, Martinez, man of the match is what I'll say.
There we go. Always man of the match in your eyes, Dave.
Well, yes, of course, yes.
But I mean, in terms of
even when he's not playing, he was brilliant in that game against Spurs.
His influence,
his influence on the celebrations,
He was definitely there in spirit, if not actually between the posts. But for me, I've kind of nicely tossed and turned in the middle of respective predictions in terms of I think both teams will score. I just think in terms of we're not quite there defensively, and I do think Southampton are going to have a goal in them. I wouldn't be surprised if we let a famous James Ward-Prowse free kick in at some point. But whether we do have the ability to go and get that winning goal, I do agree with you, Dave. It's going to be tight. I don't think it's going to be a comfortable afternoon for us. And I am torn because whenever I predict us not to get the 3 points, I am accused of being negative, Baz. But when I predict us to win in a tight game, we usually lose. So it's in terms of whether I do my bit for the team and back us not to get the 3 points, so we will, or whether I just get carried away by the enthusiasm of predicting a Villa win after our recent exploits. It's a tight one. Sod it.
not your heart.
Sod it, 2-1 Villa. Let's go for that. So, I apologise in advance to all Villa fans who have a ticket for the away end on Saturday. Don't bother going. It's going to be 4-0 Southampton, and Emre is going to get booed off, and Nathan Jones is going to be carried off on the shoulders of James Ward-Prowse and all his other players, and he'll get a hero's welcome. But where you are always guaranteed a hero's welcome is on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby we do keep you up to date with all of the Villa news. We will be putting a poll out, no doubt, in terms of whether you agree with our score predictions ahead of the game, or whether you will be just covering your eyes in sheer horror at seeing these predictions, as my co-host Mr. Trinity was just there. If there's any signings before Saturday, we will let you know. More rumours, we'll probably throw them on there as well. You can check out our previous recordings on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, or you can go onto our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, to have a listen to our dulcet, exotic tones. And we are also on FanHub as well. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening and watching. Thank you very much, Dave, for coming on. Always a pleasure to have you on, and hopefully you'll be back on soon. But from me, thank you for listening, watching, subscribing, liking, commenting, all the other things that you're doing. And I will be back with you soon.
Yeah, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much for all the listens, all the watches, all the views, everything that you do. But Unai Emery has firmly got us looking up to heaven, the heavenly spaces for Europe. However, it's always hell to get to heaven, and we're going to start by clipping the wings of the Saints come Saturday. I'm Villa till I die. Baz says he is. Dave most definitely is Emmy till he dies. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.